Imagine walking into a doctor's office, handing over, I don't know, a few $1,000s, and doing so not because you're sick, but because you actually want a medical professional to intentionally injure your face.
Right, yeah.
Or imagine getting a routine booster shot, and suddenly your own immune system decides to go to war with the lip filler you had injected 3 years ago.
I mean, it sounds like science fiction, right? Or maybe some bizarre medical drama. But what you're describing is the everyday reality of the modern medical aesthetics industry.
It really is.
Because we're living through a massive medical paradigm shift right now. For centuries, medicine was largely subtractive or additive. Like you have an infected appendix, a surgeon removes it, you get a bacterial infection, a doctor gives you a pill. The physician acts upon your body to fix a problem.
Exactly. But today, the booming world of medical spas and, aesthetic clinics has flipped that straightforward model completely upside down. The doctor isn't just fixing you anymore. They're essentially hijacking your own cellular biology to force your body to fix itself. And that brings us to the mission for today's deep dive.
Yes.
Because if you're listening to this, you have probably seen a dozen glossy ads for a local med spa promising to turn back the clock.
Oh, absolutely. They're everywhere.
So we want to give you the ultimate consumer toolkit to understand what is actually happening behind those closed clinic doors.
And to do that, we are pulling from a really fascinating stack of documents today. We're looking at the latest clinical abstracts from the premier FaceE Medical Conference.
That's the Facial Aesthetic Conference and Exhibition, right?
Yes, exactly. Along with a comprehensive scoping review on platelet-rich plasma from MDPI, some incredibly strict UK medical advertising guidelines from the GMC and the ASA, and regulatory roadmaps from RegDesk and RIMSES explaining the FDA's device pathways.
We are going to unpack what these cutting-edge procedures actually do to your cells, what happens when your body violently rejects them, and the absolute maze of legal loopholes that companies use to get these machines into a clinic.
Not to mention the psychological tricks they use to get you into the treatment chair.
Right. From spinning your own blood to treat severe medical conditions to the bizarre, kind of terrifying phenomenon of alienization. This deep dive is going to completely change how you view that local medical spa.
So if we look at the technology itself, the industry narrative has just massively shifted away from the scalpel.
For sure. People don't want surgery.
Exactly. Patients do not want the downtime, they don't want the bruising, or the risks of going under general anesthesia. So practitioners are finding incredible success with machines and injectables that utilize the body's own wound healing mechanisms.
Right. So let's talk about how they're doing this, because doctors are reporting some wild technological leaps here. Take ultrasound, for example. I always thought of ultrasound as like that cold gel they use to look at a baby.
Yeah.
But the FaCe conference abstracts detail a new generation of devices. One is called SoftWave, and it uses ultrasound to deliver synchronous parallel beams of thermal energy directly into the middle layer of your skin.
Yes, the middermis.
Yeah.
And they are using that sound wave energy to generate intense heat. They're literally heating the tissue underneath your skin to between 60 and 70 degrees Celsius.
Wait, 70 degrees Celsius?
Yeah.
That's over 150 degrees Fahrenheit? That is quite literally cooking the tissue. How is that a cosmetic treatment?
Because it's highly controlled damage. What's fascinating here is the precise biological reaction to that specific temperature. When you heat the dermis to 60 or 70 degrees, it causes an immediate denaturation of the collagen fibers.
Okay, so what does that actually mean?
Well, think of your collagen like a wool sweater. When you expose it to intense heat, the fibers shrink and tighten up instantly.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you get an immediate tightening effect on the skin.
Exactly. But more importantly, you are tricking the body. The intense heat triggers a massive wound healing cascade.
The body panics.
Right. Your immune system thinks you've sustained a severe burn, so it rushes in and ramps up neocollagenesis, which is just the medical term for the creation of brand new, fresh collagen and elastin.
But you don't look burned on the outside.
No, because the machine simultaneously cools the surface of your skin while it's heating the tissue underneath. So there's no visible burn and zero downtime. Your body just rebuilds the tissue from the inside out, lifting lax skin on the eyebrows and the neck.
That is wild. It's like an elaborate biological trick. And it's not just heat, right? I was looking at the data on how they are treating severe acne now.
Yes, the lasers.
Yeah, instead of putting a teenager on heavy systemic medications that affect their whole body, they're using lasers. But the doctors at the conference noted a very specific number, a 1726 nanometer wavelength laser. Why that specific wavelength?
Well, that is the beauty of targeted therapy. Every wavelength of light interacts with different materials in different ways. The 1726 nanometer wavelength happens to be the exact frequency that is absorbed by sebum.
Which is the oil in your skin.
Right, the lipids and fats inside your sebaceous glands.
Ah, so it ignores the water in your skin and just hunts for the fat causing the acne.
Precisely. It selectively targets and damages the hyperactive sebaceous glands that are causing the acne, effectively shutting down the problem at its source without damaging the surrounding tissue. It's essentially precision biological warfare.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if we are talking about biological warfare and harnessing the body's own tools, we have to talk about what seems to be the absolute star of the show right now.
Yeah.
PRP, or platelet-rich plasma.
Yes, the regenerative heavyweight.
I've heard this called the vampire facial in pop culture, where they literally draw your own blood, put it in a centrifuge, and spin it around. What is actually happening in that machine?
So when they spin your blood in a centrifuge, they are separating it by density. The red blood cells sink to the bottom, the clear plasma rises to the top, and right in the middle you get this highly concentrated buffy coat of platelets.
Okay.
Now, in your everyday life, platelets are the cells responsible for clotting when you get a paper cut, but they're much more than just biological superglue.
Right. The MDPI scoping review mentioned they carry a payload.
Exactly. Inside these platelets are structures called alpha granules. When you concentrate these platelets and re-inject them into a targeted area of the body, those granules burst open and release 7 key growth factors, like PDGF and VEGF.
And what do those do?
They do incredible things. They stimulate angiogenesis, which is the creation of new blood vessels. They trigger massive collagen synthesis, and they literally act as signal flares to recruit your body's stem cells to the area to repair damaged tissue.
So PRP is essentially like sending a highly concentrated VIP construction crew of growth factors straight to a biological demolition site.
That is a perfect analogy. And while Instagram might make you think PRP is only used to get rid of under-eye wrinkles, the actual medical literature reveals massive breakthroughs in far more serious applications.
Yeah, the scoping review was focused on non-fertility gynecological disorders, right?
What's fascinating here is the sheer scope of the healing. We are seeing incredible data on the use of PRP to treat things like vulvar lichen sclerosis.
Which is a chronic, incredibly painful inflammatory skin condition.
Yeah.
The data showed that in one study, over 80% of patients who received PRP injections were able to completely stop using their heavy topical steroid treatments. That's life-changing.
It really is, and its applications go even further. Doctors are utilizing PRP to treat sexual dysfunction, stress urinary incontinence, and even utilizing those growth factors to aid the reconstructive healing process for survivors of female genital mutilation, or FGMC.
Wow.
Yeah. By injecting PRP into the reconstructed tissue, it significantly reduces postoperative pain and dramatically accelerates the tissue healing timeline.
Okay, I have to stop you and push back here, because this sounds absolutely miraculous. If it's literally just your own blood, your own growth factors, and it's this effective at healing severe conditions, why isn't everyone using it perfectly? Why isn't this standard everywhere?
Because there is a glaring, massive flaw in PRP therapy right now. There is a total, chaotic lack of standardization.
What do you mean? Don't they all just draw the blood and spin it?
They do, but how they spin it changes everything. Because PRP is a procedure that a doctor does in the office rather than a standardized pill made in a regulated factory. Every single clinic does it differently. The scoping review points out that some clinics do a single spin in the centrifuge, others do a double spin.
Does that really make a big difference?
A huge difference. The actual concentration of those VIP platelets you get injected with can vary wildly. You might get 1.6 times your normal baseline platelet count, or you might get 9 times your normal count.
Oh, wow. That's a massive range.
And it gets more complicated when we talk about what else ends up in that syringe.
Right. I noticed the researchers mentioning leukocytes, white blood cells.
Yes. Some centrifuge systems capture white blood cells along with the platelets, while others filter them out to create pure PRP.
And white blood cells cause inflammation, don't they?
Exactly. They fight infection, but they trigger inflammation. Now, if you are trying to heal a torn tendon, maybe you want a little inflammation to jumpstart the healing process. But if you are injecting PRP to treat lichen sclerosis, which is already an inflammatory disease, Injecting extra white blood cells could actually make the patient's condition worse.
That is wild. It's a complete wild west of protocols out there.
It really is.
And that perfectly highlights a huge blind spot for consumers. We hear words like non-surgical or all-natural, and we think, spa day. We forget these are highly medical procedures interacting with our complex biology.
Right.
And that lack of standardization in spinning blood is just the tip of the iceberg when we look at the clinical risks.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the marketing phrase non-surgical has really lulled the public into a false sense of security. Just because you weren't going under general anesthesia doesn't mean your body won't mount a massive reaction.
Absolutely. Because the FACE abstracts are full of doctors presenting terrifying real-world complications. Take dermal fillers, for instance. A patient goes in for a seemingly routine hyaluronic acid lip filler, and suddenly they develop severe angioedema.
Which is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, it's rapid, life-threatening swelling that can completely close off your airway. It requires the doctor to immediately shift from being, an aesthetic injector to an emergency room physician managing a compromised airway right there in the clinic chair.
And that is an acute, immediate reaction. But what is truly fascinating and alarming for many are the delayed reactions. Aesthetic experts globally noted a highly surprising link between the COVID-19 vaccine and dermal fillers.
This blew my mind. So people who already had soft tissue fillers sitting in their faces for months or even years were suddenly getting swollen, painful nodules after getting their COVID vaccine.
Yes, and understanding why this happens explains exactly why non-surgical doesn't mean non-reactive.
Right.
Hyaluronic acid is a sugar that naturally occurs in your skin, which is why fillers are generally well tolerated. The body doesn't recognize the filler as foreign. But to make the filler last for a year, manufacturers have to use synthetic cross-linking chemicals to bind the sugar molecules together.
Okay, so there is actually synthetic material in there.
Exactly. Usually your immune system just ignores it. But when a patient receives a vaccine, their immune system is intentionally pushed to high alert.
Like DEFCON 1.
Exactly. It becomes hypervigilant, scanning the body for anything that looks out of place. The suddenly hyperactive immune system bumps into the old filler, notices those synthetic cross-linkers, realizes it's a foreign invader, and mounts an aggressive inflammatory attack against the patient's own face.
That is just incredible. Your own immune system gets a software update from the vaccine and suddenly decides to go to war with your jawline filler.
It's biology doing exactly what it's supposed to do, just in a way we didn't anticipate.
But there's another complication detailed in the sources, and this one isn't immunological at all. It's entirely psychological. And it has led to a completely different type of procedure where doctors use an enzyme called hyaluronidase to literally melt and dissolve people's fillers away. What is driving this massive trend of dissolving?
The medical literature refers to this psychological complication as alienization.
Alienization.
Yes, it is defined as the physical distortion of normal human anatomy beyond what would ever be considered a natural range for that individual. We're talking about the intensely overfilled, distorted features that have become increasingly common online.
But how does that even happen? Don't the practitioners see that they are distorting the person's face?
You would think so, but the data points to a collapse in perspective on both sides of the syringe. First, you have dysmorphic practitioners. These are injectors whose own perception of normal human anatomy has become skewed because they spend all day looking at exaggerated faces.
Oh, wow.
And then you have the patients caught in what's called herd aesthetics.
Herd aesthetics.
It's heavily driven by social media. Patients are seeking constant validation and conformity to a highly filtered, trending digital aesthetic. They get filler, they post a picture, they get likes, the brain releases dopamine.
And then the swelling goes down.
Right, the swelling subsides, they feel inadequate again, so they go back for more. The physical anatomical distortion, the alienization, is essentially just a visible symptom of a much deeper societal and mental health loop.
That makes so much sense.
And because of this, there is now a rapidly growing medical industry dedicated entirely to electively dissolving these bad, alienating filler jobs so patients can start over.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. If we have ultrasound machines cooking tissue to 70 degrees, if we have fillers that can suddenly trigger an immune attack years later, and if the whole industry is battling this psychological loop of alienization, how on earth are these devices legally sitting in a strip mall clinic?
Well, that brings us to the regulatory maze of the FDA.
Which completely shocked me.
It's very misunderstood. The FDA regulates medical devices based on their potential risk to the patient. Class I devices are low risk, like a toothbrush or a bandage. Class 2 are moderate risk, which includes a lot of diagnostic kits and the majority of these aesthetic lasers and devices.
In Class 3.
Class 3 devices are high risk or life-sustaining, like implantable pacemakers. But the specific terminology the FDA uses, according to the Red Desk and RIMSY's roadmaps, is where the real trickery lies for the average consumer.
Yes. Let's talk about FDA registered. Because if you look at any Medispa website, they boldly claim their new laser is FDA registered. As a consumer, I see that, and I immediately assume the FDA ran rigorous clinical trials and stamped it as safe and effective.
That is exactly what they want you to think. But legally, FDA registered or FDA listed simply means the manufacturer paid a fee and filled out a form to enter their company into the FDA's database. That is it.
You're kidding. So it just means the FDA knows the company's mailing address.
Essentially, yes. It requires absolutely zero clinical evaluation of the device's safety or effectiveness.
That is an unbelievable marketing trick.
Right?
What about FDA cleared? I see that one a lot too.
So FDA cleared refers to the 510(k) pathway, mostly used for Class 2 devices. Now, clearance still does not mean the FDA ran its own clinical trials on the machine.
Wait, really?
Really, it simply means the manufacturer submitted paperwork proving their new device is substantially equivalent to a predicate device, meaning a machine that is already legally being sold on the market.
Wait, so if my company invents a new laser, I don't have to prove it works on its own. I just have to prove it's basically the same as a laser from 10 years ago.
Exactly. If it has the same intended use and similar technological characteristics, it gets cleared to go to market. To actually prove a device works independently, you need it to be FDA approved.
Approved, not cleared.
Right. That is the pre-market approval, or PMA, process. This is the highest level of scrutiny, usually for those Class 3 devices, and it requires comprehensive actual clinical data proving both safety and efficacy.
So registered is literally just a database fee. Cleared means it's a copycat of an older machine, and only approved actually means it passed rigorous clinical trials.
Precisely.
That is vital for people to know. But I also saw the regulatory roadmaps mentioning a massive global shift happening in 2026, something called the QMSR.
Yes, the Quality Management System Regulation Update. For a long time, the U.S. had its own specific manufacturing rules, but starting in 2026, the FDA is aligning U.S. systems with global ISO standards, specifically ISO 13485.2016.
What does that mean for the companies?
It means all medical device manufacturers, regardless of whether their device is just registered or fully approved, have to significantly tighten their quality controls, risk management, and manufacturing practices to meet these strict global standards.
The sources also highlight a fascinating new rule for artificial intelligence. Because AI algorithms learn and change over time, the FDA had to invent the PCCP.
The Predetermined Change Control Plan.
Right. This allows companies to pre-specify how their medical software will update itself so they don't have to submit a brand new application to the FDA every single time the AI gets smarter.
It's a necessary evolution of regulation trying to keep pace with exponentially advancing technology.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this deep dive? We now know how these devices sneak through legal loopholes with words like cleared or registered. We know the severe immune reactions and the psychological risks. So we have to look at the final step of the pipeline.
The marketing.
Exactly. If the FDA isn't actually demanding clinical proof that a lot of these wrinkle creams and lasers work, how are these clinics legally convincing millions of people to buy them without getting shut down for fraud?
It is a very delicate dance. And it brings us to the strict rules of medical marketing. In the UK, for example, the laws are aggressively governed by the GMC, the General Medical Council, and the ASA, the Advertising Standards Authority.
And they do not mess around.
Not at all. The GMC's absolute golden rule is that advertising cannot exploit a patient's vulnerability.
The sources highlighted some crazy cases where doctors crossed the line, like exploiting the fear of the pandemic to sell 1.7 million pounds in private COVID tests, or, shockingly, misdiagnosing children to scare parents into paying for private care.
Exploitation like that is a fast track to losing your medical license. And the ASA is just as hawkish about the actual copywriting, the specific words a clinic can use.
Yeah, the regulations around what you can and cannot promise are incredibly tight.
For example, you legally cannot claim that an anti-aging moisturizer has a cumulative or persistent beneficial effect on normal skin.
Right. You can only legally state that the effects are temporary. You cannot call a cream a facelift in a jar.
Nope.
If you promise a permanent cure for aging, the ASA will heavily fine you.
Exactly.
But this raises a huge question. If a clinic cannot legally guarantee a cure, and they cannot make grand, sweeping anti-aging claims in their traditional advertising without facing severe regulatory fines, how are they making so much money? How are they getting so many people into the chair?
The answer is absolutely brilliant and frankly a little concerning. The clinics aren't just selling the medical device anymore. They are utilizing a massive loophole. They are selling themselves on social media.
Ah, so lifestyle marketing.
Exactly. At the FACE conference, there were entire sessions dedicated not to biology, but to utilizing Instagram to build a brand. Doctors are taught how to gain hundreds of thousands of followers and create an intensely loyal client base.
Because that bypasses the rules.
Right. They completely bypass the highly regulated, restrictive language of traditional print advertising by creating an aspirational lifestyle brand online.
They don't need to write, "This machine will give you a facelift" in a newspaper ad, which would get them fined. They just post a beautifully lit, highly curated video of themselves looking flawless, stepping out of a luxury car, and casually showing the laser device in the background.
Exactly. They leverage their personal brand and their own perceived beauty to drive sales.
And of course, that feeds right back into the psychological trap we discussed earlier. It fuels that loop of alienization.
Patients are constantly bombarded by these filtered, flawless practitioners, making the patient chase an impossible aesthetic in real life.
It really is a closed loop. The social media marketing creates the aesthetic anxiety, the FDA-cleared devices and dermal fillers provide the temporary fix, and the lack of clinical standardization and psychological pressures keep the patient coming back.
Sometimes, until they push it too far, need to be dissolved with hyaluronidase and start the whole cycle over again.
Okay, we have covered an incredible amount of ground today. We've gone from the fascinating science of using heat to trick your body into making collagen, to spinning your own blood, to harvest VIP construction crews for regenerative healing.
We've covered a lot.
We've explored the unexpected mechanisms of delayed immune reactions, how a vaccine can turn your body against your filler, and the deep psychological trap of alienization. We've navigated the absolute maze of FDA jargon, learning that registered is practically a meaningless fee compared to actual approved clinical trials.
And we've seen how Instagram lifestyle marketing manages to legally sell the dream of youth.
So to you listening, the next time you see a glossy ad for a med spa on your feed, or you're tempted by a non-surgical fix, apply this knowledge. Check if that miracle device is actually FDA approved, or if they just paid a fee to be registered.
Ask if your PRP will have white blood cells in it.
Yes. Look past the aspirational Instagram marketing, and remember that non-surgical is still a highly medical procedure interacting with your complex biology.
And as we close, I want to leave you with one final mind-bending concept to ponder. It was drawn directly from an abstract presented on the future of medical treatments.
Okay, what is it?
Right now, as we've discussed, we inject synthetic hyaluronic acid, or we use lasers to intentionally damage our tissue to trigger a healing response. But with the rapid rise of personalized medicine, we are seeing autologous stem cell therapies and actual cell cloning in active development for things like hair loss.
Cell cloning.
Yes. So the question is, how long until all these FDA-cleared lasers, hot ultrasound machines, and artificial fillers become entirely obsolete?
Wow.
Imagine a near future where a clinic doesn't heat your skin to 70 degrees or inject synthetic sugar. Instead, they simply clone your own youthful cells in a lab and inject them to permanently rebuild your face from the inside out.
It makes you wonder, if they can eventually just clone your biology, the whole idea of medical aesthetics is going to change all over again. The doctor really won't be fixing you. You'll literally just be regrowing yourself. Incredible.